Hi, this is Rev Ed with today's Back Porch Devotional from Genesis chapter 33, verses 12 through 20. Then Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But Jacob said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he brought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar, and called it El Elohe Israel. Well, here we see that Esau and Jacob, who are now reconciled, are moving back towards where they came from. And Esau invites Jacob to come and go with him, that they may live side by side. Jacob doesn't say no, but he uses the youth of his children and the size of his herds and all the rest of it as an excuse to say, "I'm going to settle over here and you settle over there." And so what we see is that the brothers are reconciled, but they're not going to be hanging out together all the time. And that is perfectly all right. What we have to understand about forgiveness and reconciliation is that those things do not mean that you suddenly have to pretend that you're best friends. Forgiveness and reconciliation are very hard work. Indeed, it's a work of the Holy Spirit. It cannot be accomplished through human means, which is why we have to appeal to God for help, because all of us have a tendency to hold grudges and to not want to seek forgiveness. And yet we know that forgiveness is at the core, the very essence of our faith and what we believe. God has forgiven us, so we must forgive others. Matthew 18, Peter asked Jesus, "How many times must my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times?" And Peter's trying to show off and be the A student in the class, because 7 was the Hebrew number of perfection. So I think the rabbis taught that you needed to forgive somebody 3 times, then be done with it. But Peter's trying to show he's going beyond that. But remember what Jesus said to him. He said not 7, but 70 times 7, which is an old Israelite expression for an infinite amount of times. If someone sincerely asks your forgiveness, you have to forgive them, and you have to seek to be reconciled. But what this doesn't mean is that you have to be a doormat for them. You do not have to continually put yourself in a position where you're having to forgive people for doing the same thing over and over and over again. We are not required to be best buddies with people who have wronged us and that we have forgiven and have made reconciliation with. But like Jacob and Esau, we're allowed to live separately. We don't have to invite them over for Sunday dinner or have them over for birthday parties or always be hanging out with them. Not at all. But we do have to let go of the resentment. We do have to let go of anger. We have to let God's perfect mercy and justice rule over every part of our lives. And that's especially so when it comes to relationships with other people, particularly with people that we find difficult. Of course, we have to remember that we ourselves are probably difficult as far as other people are concerned, and that we need to be mindful of our own need to seek forgiveness when we have wronged others. The principle of forgiveness is it starts one-on-one. If somebody's offended you, you don't need to talk about them to your pastor or to your friends or spread it around on social media. You need to go to them and say, "Hey, there's this thing between us and we need to make it right." Some people aren't even aware when they've done something offensive. Others are aware but are hoping nobody says anything. But true wholeness and reconciliation only come when the truth is fully expressed, and we have to speak the truth in love. So it is in that spirit that we pursue forgiveness and reconciliation. But we do not have to put ourselves in the position of being walked over, and we don't have to be best friends with people that we have had a broken relationship with that has now been restored. But that doesn't mean that we have to be best buddies. There's freedom in that. And God's mercy has provided the means by which we can move on with life and not be bound in chains that are made up of resentment and anger and bitterness. These things will eat you alive, and we just need to turn them over to God, remembering that we cannot worship God properly if there is anger and bitterness in our hearts against others. So seek to forgive, seek to be forgiven, seek to be reconciled, but don't feel like you have to be burdened by the need to be best friends with people that you've had difficulty with. We are to be innocent as doves, but wise as serpents. So don't be foolish about these things. It is not wrong to protect yourself against people who you know are going to cause trouble at some point. So avoid the trouble, and when trouble comes, seek forgiveness and reconciliation, remembering that God, through His Holy Spirit, has provided the means for wholeness and healing in every situation. God's blessings be upon you this day.